Hello everyone and welcome to our Snow Live. Now, I think it's cold and snowing pretty much across all of the United States, but I know that we have people watching from everywhere. Just a video that I did the other day, just from the comments and recognizing the names because I have texted and talked with them before. We had Australia, we had South Africa, we had Germany, of course we had Canada, United States. I just remember looking at those comments and thinking, these are people from all over the world, and I love that. I'm so excited that you have chosen to come and join us. So when we got notification, of course, we knew the storm was coming, but must have been like Monday or Tuesday or something like that. I told Steve, I said, let's do a snow day live. Now, I wasn't sure what was going to happen Thursday. That was more ice and stuff, and I thought, well, that could be dangerous in getting to the YouTube studio where we do our filming, or even no electricity if things got frozen and things got really bad. So, but I knew snow was going to be here on Friday, and I said, let's do a snow live for everyone, because I know there's a huge majority of people that are inside, not outside making snowmen. But anyway, we are Texas, so we are in the South. So when it gets snow and icy, the whole world shuts down. And I grew up in Kansas, and so we're used to the blizzards and the cold weather and how to work through that. And I know that everyone from Kansas up, they laugh at the South when we get snow and ice, but it really does shut everything down. And then one of the main reasons is that we're not prepared for it, and it doesn't happen all the time. And even our structures and our roads are put together differently. And so it really affects everything when it gets snowy and icy. Anyway, welcome to our Snow Live. So I was thinking about what could we do today, and I know that we have tons of new people watching, and we also have our people that are always with us. So I thought I would do a review on some options. Of course, you can interact. This is a live, and put your questions in there. Questions are a little bit delayed, so I may not get to it immediately, but we'll get to it just as soon as we can. And we're going to talk about these two beautiful quilts that are behind me. But before we get started on that, I want to go over a couple of things so I don't forget. And when it's at the beginning of a video, then people can go back and find it more easily. So first of all, we have our website that is squareandasquare.com. Squareandasquare.com, of course, you can email us, you can look at products, you can get, it's our main website, our general website. You can get lots of information. You can sign up for our premium club that I'm going to talk about today that we're just getting started on. You can sign up for our Quilt Club Week. You can sign up for our emails, all of that. You can order the products, see the fabric. That's squareandasquare.com. Now we have another website called squareandasquare.net, and this is our teaching website. This is where all of our videos go, and you can go back in and watch anything that we've done anytime you want. And of course, I already mentioned we have people all over the earth watching, and so it's a different time, a different day, and you can't always join us at the live time. And so that is an easy way for you to go back and watch. Of course, we have stuff on YouTube, we have stuff on Facebook, but sometimes it can be cumbersome in going back and finding. And I'm a really organized, structured person. So when I go in and watch different videos or take different teachings or classes, I want to be able to have an easy structure that I can go in and say, okay, I've watched that video, I've watched that one, I want to go in and I'm looking for the fourth part, whatever. So that's what squareandasquare.net is. And there's 3 different categories that you can go in and watch. There are the webinars that are like this one, that are free and to the public, and you can get a lot of learning, a lot of ideas, a lot of motivation, hundreds of hours in all of these. But that's where you can go in and get this video later and get all of our past ones. We started doing heavy filming clear back in 2018, so there are tons of videos and lots of good entertainment and learning and education in there. So go back in and watch those. And then we have Quilt Club Week, which is a week, the last week of September. We've been doing it since 2020 of COVID. It's kind of how Quilt Club Week got started. And so now we have 5 years of teaching in there. That is a subscription website, so you go in and subscribe for, you can do it monthly or you can do it yearly. And then we have our Premium Club. Premium Club is kind of set up in semesters, like going to school, like a university. We have a spring semester, which we're just getting started on, and so it's a great time to join. We have a fall semester. This one that you see over here was from our fall semester of 2024. Fall semesters have about 9 or 10 classes in it, and our spring semesters have about 10 to 12 to 13 classes in it because we have more time from January to the beginning of May. So this one here was called Fly Me to the Stars. We did that in fall of 2024, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then this one is called Crossroads, and we did, gosh, where are we at? I'm lost in time. This one was a fall class too, so I guess, was that 23?
I think so.
I guess so. Anyway, the time just flies by when you're having so much fun creating all of these beautiful quilts and classes and patterns. So go into the square2square.net, and of course, if you sign to watch all of these, and of course, if you sign up with your email, then you're going to get notifications when we have things like this. So everybody on our email list got a notification of our Snow Live today at 1 o'clock. So that's exciting that we can give you a little heads up on stuff. Now, we also have another thing that we do. It is called In My Sewing Room. And In My Sewing Room is just kind of sporadic. It's just like when I'm doing something that I feel like people will want to watch. It's actually In My Sewing Room. It's not all... I don't always have all the samples and everything ready to go. It's just whatever it is that I'm working on, I'll show you the process of what I'm doing. So it's a lot of hands-on sewing, a lot of hands-on cutting. And if you'll notice the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a lot of that In My Sewing Room.
And it's mostly on Facebook right
And
now.
it's mostly on Facebook. The In My Sewing Rooms. Now, in December, we did a marathon class, and so it was like 2 hours on a Monday morning, 2 hours on a Monday afternoon, and then 2 hours on a Tuesday morning. And we went through the whole process of making one of our quilts with some of our new patriotic fabrics. Also on the square2square.com is where you can see all the fabrics and order the kits and so on. And before I forget, I'll let you know there's going to be no shipping from the warehouse January 22nd to February 4th, okay? So if you're thinking about placing an order, do it now so that we can get it out, or you can go ahead and place your order and it will ship afterwards if it's during those time spans, okay? Remember, you can get your comments in, a little bit of a delay. We'll get to it just as soon as we can. For those of you that are brand new to us, I have been doing Square to Square, which is a special technique of putting quilts together where you get speed and accuracy, but not the headache and the hard work and the tribulation that so many different quilting projects have. We know that the triangle is the beauty of a quilt, but that's also where the hassle and the headache and the hard work is at. And whether you think about it or not, you have trained yourself. I always say if you've been in quilting longer than 15 minutes, you've trained yourself to look at a quilt or a project and say, that is either too hard for me, I don't have the skill to do it, or it's going to be too time consuming because there's too many pieces and some of those pieces could be difficult to put together. But once you start learning the Square to Square system, the science of patchwork and the overcutting, you'll see how quilts like this are achievable for you. Now, I do have I try to read when I do these different comments from other people because I feel like that's a great way for those of you that are new to hear something from someone else, a review that they have. Let's see, this one, there was one that, okay, so this one is from this quilt right here of Crossroads. And this one we did in one of our fall semesters, I guess of 23 now. And it was called Crossroads. And she says, last week I finished pinning my farmer's wife quilt together, which is one of our semesters that we did, and a great one if you haven't watched it to go in and watch. And just the pattern adapting in that one, the comments from people of the farmer's wife was, overall the comment was, oh my gosh, not only did the lights come on, but all of the lights came on. So definitely go back. And even if you don't make the quilts, you'll learn so much just from watching the videos. So she said, last week I finished pinning my farmer's wife and it's ready for the quilting. I thought I would take a few days to work on something different before I started the quilting, and I decided to tackle the Valley View Road from the Crossroad quilt. So this was the Crossroad quilt, and it's done in 20-inch blocks. So we talked about how we took a 20-inch block and then we broke it down into different sections and parts to put it together. And just to see how all of this just pops out when you're doing it. So she was working on Valley View. I don't remember now which one was Valley View. But anyway, she said, I was pretty nervous because of the non-traditional measurements, but with all the techniques learned and the practice of putting together my farmer's wife, I was elated to discover that the 2 blocks ended up being perfect. They were correct and spot on my very first try. And that's what I strive for in my teaching, is to be able to give the student all of the information, the tips, the hints, the skills, the knowledge, the education, so that on the first try, it comes together perfect and all of the measurements are correct. And then she even talked about how she felt so inspired that she went in and kind of changed it up a little bit and came up with a creation of her own for that block. And then she goes on to say, Jodi's teaching has been invaluable for increasing my accuracy and developing on my own personal measurements. Thank you, Jodi and Steve, for all the hard work that you put into these teachings at Premium Club. So this one was Crossroads. There's one of the testimonies from it, and just a beautiful quilt of the square and square and how it all comes together. So a couple of other testimonies for you, but I'll read those as we go along. So I want to get started with the options. And we're going to learn, there's almost 50 options in this new semester of 2025 spring for Premium Club. We're going to be learning 4 new options, possibly 5. I may add a 5th one. We'll see how the semester goes. But that'll get us up to 49 and 50 options. That means 50 different quilting units that you can get, and they all start out just like this with a square in the middle and strips on the side. That still just blows me away. After 40 years of doing square and a square, I am just amazed at how you can take this simple piece and the ease of cutting it and putting it together and turning it into something like this. It's just mind-boggling that you can do it. And anybody can do it, and that's what I love. Can you cut a square? Yep. Can you cut strips? Can you sew them on? This is the main construction of every project that we do. So when you look down here at the table, let's just kind of go over what they are. So you can see how I have it laid out here, that we start out with a basic square, and then the way we trim it up in the square and a square system with the square and a square tool, we're going to get an option 1, and that's basically a square and a square. That's where the name comes from. We have a 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. Your block is square. Your seam allowances are great. Your points are going to be great. It's just so exciting to know that even in just these simple beginning ones, that you can come out with perfect shapes and perfect units. So leave the 1/4 of an inch. You get your option 1. So we start out with the basic square. This is an option 3. You're going to get flying geese. And because we're cutting it in half, then these corners we have to trim different, because we have to create a seam allowance in here and move our points so that when we come back and sew a 1/4 and a 1/4, our point is right there exactly where it needs to be. And then in the option 4, the half square triangles, of course you start out with your basic square. You learned how to do the sharp trim we call the 2-step. That we did on 2 because we're cutting at one time with flying geese. Now we're going to do it on all 4 because we're going to cut both directions and we're going to get our half square triangles. Now all of the options build off of what you've learned right here. So once you learn these, then everything else just expands and moves on from this. And with our new options that we're doing, you're going to see how even our new ones build off of what you already know from the basic square to trimming it with 1/4 of an inch, the option 1, cutting it this time diagonally, tip to tip instead of horizontal and vertical, and you get this one called an option 8. And we just move on from there. So let's look at the, and of course we have in our reference books, let me grab it. Okay, the ruler I'm going to use today is a mini ruler. I just love the mini ruler. It comes like this, and I use it for almost every quilt we make, no matter what color, no matter what size, no matter how big or small the quilt is going to be. This is one that I'm using just over and over again. You'll see the qualities of it today and why I love it so much. Then this one is the Diamonds by the Square book. It's what we call volume 2. And like you see here, these have a square in the middle. This one is when we have a diamond shape in the middle. And then this one is the main reference book, Square and a Square. It's volume 1. So it goes from option 1 to 17. Those options all start out just like this with a square in the middle. You've got over 30 patterns in here. You have multiple sizes of patterns. You have over 12 pages of charts, and these are the charts that I refer to when I'm building and creating a new design. It helps me know the sizes of my center square and the sizes of my strips so that whatever it is I'm making turns out to be the size that I need it to be. And these are for the options 1 through 17, and then of course the page with the option that gives you all of the details. Make sure you check out the quick tips for the trimming, and then of course any magic math if you're doing something that's I'm going to say a little off the wall, that's not a chart. So most of the time I just go right back to a chart and I figure my size. But remember, in the patterns and when you're first getting started, you know, what does a pattern do? It gives you everything that you need to know. It gives you fabric amounts, it gives you what to cut, your squares, your strips, and so on. So that's where you start, is here with the reference book, one of the rulers, take off with one of the videos or one of the patterns where we already give all of this to you. Now, the reason why these shapes are so important is because everything builds off of them. And once you understand the 1/4 of an inch cut or the 2-step cut, then they all just flow and the magic happens. Do we have a question? Nope? Okay. Then here we are with our square in the middle, strips on the side. I want to make an option 1, so I'm going to trim leaving that 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. This is my mini ruler, and I'm going to look for my 90. So if you see the Square and a Square logo, it's kind of right above the 90. And the first set of lines where they come together and touch, that's the tip, and that's the 90. That's a 90-degree arc in there. And of course, that's what a square is. Now, I want to push that 90 right into that corner of this fabric square. And I'm going to trim, and see that 1/4 of an inch? That's going to give me this perfect 1/4 of an inch seam allowance off of that corner. So I just push it in there, just snug it in there. The lines go right over the seam. You have a heavy grid line that shoots right through that corner. This one is looking perfect. And even if in the sewing of your basic square, you have freedom that when you get ready to trim, that you can push it out just a thread or two, make it a little bit larger if you need to, pull it back in a thread or two, make it a little bit smaller if you need to, so that you can get the perfection of making this the exact size that you need. And you just go around to all 4 sides. Now these are kind of tiny. I'm not going to worry about saving those, but when they do get larger, I do save them and I use them. You can use them on the side of your units, just like I have a strip. You can use those triangle units. Of course, they have to be appropriate size for whatever your center is, but they're not throwaways. You just go in and recycle them and use them in another project. So here you can see I've done all 4 sides, and that's my option 1. Now, can you believe that from this option 1, you can make a tumbling block quilt? A tumbling block quilt is normally diamond shapes and set in pieces. But when you use your option 1 to make it, and it's in your tumbling blocks is right here in this book, because all you need are these option 1s to do it. So you're going to do your options, of course, in the colors that you need, and these are all going to be different colors, and see how you sew it together in a row. And then on the next row, when you sew your row together, see how the seam here is above and below the option of the next row. See this interaction? There's your diamond shape right there. So you would make these match up in your appropriate colors, and you're going to get that depth that you get in a tumbling blocks. So you can already see how learning the options and applying them to the different patterns and designs that are in the quilt world, you can make just about everything and patterns that are normally very difficult to do. So there's your option 1. Now, to make our flying geese, we need to be able to see all of it, yeah. Okay, so can we expand out a little more? Here's our basic square. Everything starts out with a basic square, just like we had a basic square and we trimmed it up for option 1, 1/4 of an inch. Now we're going to have a basic square, and we're going to trim, leaving a 1/4 of an inch on 2 opposite sides, just like we did here on all 4. And the new thing that you're going to learn is how to 2-step, how to go right up to that tip. Now this one I've already got started, so we're just going to go ahead and use it. You can see the 1/4 of an inch here, I've already trimmed. You can see the 2-step there, I've already trimmed. So across from it is a 2-step. So let's look at our ruler and see what we're going to do. So here's your 90, and of course that's what you'll push into the corner for your 1/4 of an inch. But to do my 2-step, I'm going to just step it over 2 lines. So there's my 90, and I'm going to step it 1, 2, and it goes nice and sharp. So when I make my cut, it's going to be nice and sharp. It will not have that 1/4 of an inch. And of course, I look where I've already cut to make sure I'm staying just as square and neat as possible. And when you go to that 2-step, see how you have a new grid line that shoots through that opposite corner. So let's look. See how sharp that is? See how sharp? Here we have the 1/4 of an inch, and now here we need to do the other 1/4 of an inch. So there it is, sharp, sharp, 4th, 4th. And now we're just going to come in here and use the edge of the ruler, and I'm going to go right through those sharp points. I'm going to look at my horizontal and vertical lines to make sure I'm staying square. And there I have my 2 perfect flying geese, just like that. And of course, I love stars, and flying geese are what you need for stars. So just like that, you've got perfect flying geese and perfect stars. Just thrilling, thrilling, thrilling. If you want borders, look how nice these borders are. You can do borders horizontal. Beautiful border. Now if you did 2 rows of these for a border and you offset them, you get a pretty cool look also. Let's play like this one's cut. So see, you could do 2 rows of these for a border, and look how cool they would be. Now, you can also do climbing geese, which means you have a square on the side. So you would have a square here on this one, and a square here. I'm sorry, you would have squares here and here, and a square there. So look at that climbing flying geese border that you can do. Just endless. On what you've learned right here, you could just sit and make quilts forever and not run out of ideas. Okay. So now let's look at half square triangles, option 4. So of course we start out with our basic square. We learned how to 2-step. Where's our little? We learned how to 2-step on 2 sides, and now we're going to 2-step all 4. Cut, and you have all 4. So let's go ahead and trim one of those up. And I'm just going to 2-step all 4 corners. And as I go around, I want to look where I've already cut and make sure that my block is staying as square as possible, because I want all 4 of these to turn out to be the same size. And then I just come in and cut in half one direction. And then I come in and cut in half the opposite direction, and that gives me my 4 half square triangles. Now we have something new that we've been doing with half square triangles, and that's where we take this concept of our half square triangles, but we're going to do something a little bit different to it, and it gets us multiple half square triangles going together. So think about when you want to do a sawtooth border. See how you want all of these to be going, the color and the angle to be going the same direction in a sawtooth border, or when you have 2 or more half square triangles going together. And we know that, of course, this side has to be sewn to this side to get that correct. And we know that if you do it on that one, or that one, you've got 3 choices, and it's going to be wrong if you sew it like that. And so many times we put these together, we match them all up nice and neat. Somehow they get turned in our hand, and instead of sewing down this side, we wind up sewing down this side, and we have to rip it out because then our half square triangles are not going in the correct direction. So when you learn the firefly, which we have a video and a book to help you with the fireflies, because there's a lot of different things you can do with the fireflies. It allows you to get multiple triangle units going together without the hassle of getting them turned wrong. So that's the firefly book. So if you come in here and just cut one time, like I did, see how you have those 2 shapes. Now it's different than a flying goose. A flying goose, remember, we have that 1/4 of an inch right there. So it's not a flying goose. This is what we call a firefly rectangle. But look, if I turn it like this, and I sew it, and then I cut it in half, look how I have 2 half square triangles going together. Now you can put up to 4 of these firefly rectangles together and get up to 4 of these half square triangles together in a sawtooth fashion. Now you can do more, but to me they start to wiggle a little bit and you lose some of your perfection. So I only recommend doing 2 or 3 or 4. If you need more than that, then you just make groups. Now something that I also love about this is that if this is sewn and I cut it in half, then this one just kind of flips over here, and I have my 2 pieces I need for a bear paw. So if you're going to do a bear paw, you need 2 to go together that direction, and you need 2 to go together this direction. And out of this one will be one side, and this one will be the other side. So to make a bear paw now turns into one of the most simplest things that you can do, when it was a little bit more of an intermediate block or a quilt to put together. Do we have any questions? Okay, now I want to talk about one more thing before we get into our new bat wings that we're going to do. So no matter how you are putting a quilt together, whether it's square and a square, traditional, or whatever, you need to know the difference in a sewn block and in a cut block. And whether it's a piece or a unit or a block, see how this has a raw edge on it? So it's a cut size. My flying goose is complete, my sewing is done, but this is not a sewn size. Now, it is a cut size because it still has raw edges. Now, when you look at these over here, let's look at this one over here. See how there are no, this block, this quilt, they're completed. There's no raw edges, there's no cut edges. So these are a sewn size or a finished size. Now, where people run into trouble is this finished. And most of the time, I didn't finished and unfinished. I didn't talk about, got three different things going on in my head. I didn't talk about our quilt text hotline. And we have a quilt text hotline. It's 817-713-2879. There, you can see it on the screen. And this is a dedicated line where you can show me pictures, ask me questions, send a little video. If you have a smartphone, you can do all of that and send it to me. And therefore, your teacher is right there seeing your work, helping you with your questions and whatever it is that you need some help with. So remember that. And most of the time, when people are sending me a question and asking for help with sizing, and even when they go in and use the charts in the book, it's because they don't know the difference in the sewn or the cut or a finished and an unfinished, okay? So let's talk about the finished and the unfinished of where the rub comes in. So even though this is a finished option 3 flying goose, I don't have to do anything else to it except just sew it together in my project. It is not a finished size. A finished size and a sewn size are the same, and that means no raw edge. An unfinished and a cut is the same, and it's going to be a larger size because, see, when I sew all the way around this, it's going to get smaller, okay? Now, I say that because the next thing I want to show you is about this rectangle. And we need to work with a sewn size. Anytime you're building a pattern from scratch or a quilt or using graph paper, you always start in that smaller size of that sewn size, okay? So with a rectangle, for a flying goose, in the sewn size, we call it a perfect rectangle. Because whatever this is, let's say that it's 2 inches, you double it, and that's what that is. So a sewn size of this rectangle is a 2 by 4. That means with raw edges, it's going to be a 2.5 by 4.5, because those are the seam allowances, and that would be a cut when this is a sewn. Now, if I use this number and see that 2.5, if I do 2.5 and 2.5, which is 5, see that direction is not 5 here or here. So this is not a perfect rectangle. Perfect rectangle is when you can double it and it's the long side, or you can divide the long side in half and that's the short side. So with a flying goose, it's a perfect rectangle. Now, a perfect rectangle also can be, so when you're looking at quilts and designs, if you have 2 squares, so let's say this is 2 inch, 2 inch, a 2 inch square, if you put 2 of those together, look what you have the 2 by 4. So when you look at a design or look at a pattern, if it has 2 squares, you could also use a rectangle. You could also use a flying goose. You could also use a bat wing, the new bat wing. So see how this is a perfect rectangle, just like a perfect flying goose, just like a perfect plain rectangle. But instead of having just a plain triangle unit inside, look at these beautiful little bats that we're going to sew a strip on the side and trim it up and get our bat wings, just like this. And look at that beautiful little, this is the bat body, this little square in here. So think about how you can just add so much pizzazz in your quilts by just switching up your flying geese to a bat wing. So look at this beautiful little star, just simple flying geese, whatever you want in the corner, whatever you want in the center. And then look at this beautiful star where we've got the bat wing in here. So you get that extra square going on in there, and it's not any harder. This is not hard. This is not hard once you learn the system and understand what we're doing. Just like that. Now let's look at, let's just go ahead and finish here with the bat wing, and then we'll look at it in some quilts. Do we have any questions? Okay. Now, in Premium Club this semester, what we call spring semester, starting on Monday, we are going to be learning 4 new options, and I really want you to come and join Premium Club and learn these options. It doesn't matter if you're new to the square and a square or if you're new to quilting. It's not going to be too hard for you. Everything we do is great and easy for people to do. There's, let's see, this one I think is a beginner. And she said, your square and a square system has innovated quilting with advanced teaching techniques and accuracy, but you can be a beginner and understand it and do it. Every book, option, and ruler makes patterns I never dreamed of doing possible. I now have square eyes and I'm loving it. So we talk about how that when you learn your options, you get what we call square eyes, and then when you start looking at quilts and projects, wherever you're at, looking at quilts, you start seeing the different options and the different triangle units in those quilts. And when you realize, oh, that's an option 1, oh, that's an option 3, oh, that's an option 4, and you know how easy it is to make, then when you see it in the quilts, they're not intimidating and they're not scary to do. And the cool thing in our online classes is that when class is over, it's not over. You can go back and watch over and over and over and over again. And we've got several students that have just, well, more than several, but students just really excel, and they're building such awesome, beautiful quilts. Last semester, our quilt was this one right here, Fly Me to the Stars. And part of what I wanted to do in this one is teach creativity. And it's kind of like, how do you teach creativity? A lot of people say either you have it or you don't. But with the right tools and knowledge, you can increase your level of creativity. So we talked about how when you have a plain square here, how you can change it up, or a plain square here, how you can change it up. And we showed lots of different samples and examples. And I did a reel. You might go back and on the Square and a Square Facebook page and look for the reel where I showed quilts that the students had finished and that they had made from just a few weeks ago, last fall. And they are just over the top, beautiful and creative, where they go in and kind of switch things up. I read you one from a girl who talked about doing her Valley View Road, and about how after she made it, she discovered how simple it was. And then she went in and switched it up to create a whole new design, because she's gotten what I call these levels of learning, of where you don't just look at a pattern in a quilt and sew it up, but you think about how you can switch it up and change it up. And what I say, make it yours, make it, more of your personality and what you like. Now, let's go ahead and do our bat wings, and then I want to talk some more about how to implement them in quilts and be that creative and go above and beyond and make your quilt another level of ooh and ah. Now, both of these are definitely ooh and ah quilts that we have made, but I want to show you how you can take these bat wings that I'm doing, and not really any more time, not really any more experience. You can go in and switch them up and make this quilt just a different, over and above, beautiful quilt. So let's look at our bat wings of what we're going to do, and then we're going to go in and look at them in some of the quilts a little bit. Okay, so we start out with our basic square. You can see how we trim, leaving the 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. So that's just like an option 1. But we're going to come in here and cut it diagonally, and we're going to get these 4 units, and this is what we call an option 8. So look at an option 8, what you can do, just if you leave it as an option 8. So see how you can put it on the outside edge and put something in the middle? Now, of course, these sizes are not appropriate, but look how you could do something like that on a block. Put an option 1 in the middle, do a plain square in the middle, you know, just a 9 patch, a 4 patch, just how easy it is to do that. Now, also something that I love are the borders. Look at this beautiful border that you can do with an option 8. And look how easy it is to turn that corner and go down the other side and get your mitered edge. So one of the semester classes that we did maybe about 4 years ago was one on borders. And so we started with option 1 and we went through and showed you what option 1 looks like as a border, how to change sizes, how to figure sizes, how to switch up colors to get different looks. We did option 1, we did option 2, we did option 3 flying geese, we did option 4. We went through I'm going to guess and say 10 of the options, and we had 3 different quilts or 3 different projects that we just kept adding to so that you could see what the quilt looked like just by doing like a row by row of options, or we did a little Christmas tree. It was just a great class to help you learn the options, to help you learn borders, to help you learn sizing and figuring those borders, and to just give you ideas and creativity of what those options look like. And when you switch up colors, what happens when you put different colors in different spots, how it changes the whole look of everything. Okay, so we have our basic square. We've trimmed it, leaving that 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. And now we're just going to come in here and cut it tip to tip, both directions. Be careful for it not to move. And there are those beautiful little option 8s. Now, to do the new bat wings, we're going to take our option 8 and we're just going to sew a strip on the side. And just like with your options, your strip has to cover whatever it is in the middle. So if this is 3 inches, it's got to be at least 3 inches, but we make them just a hair bit bigger because it's easier and less time consuming to sew it on the square. So we make it just a little bit larger. And then we're going to come in here and trim it up. We sew it on both sides. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to trim this point right here with that 1/4 of an inch. See that 1/4 of an inch off of that point? So I go back to the 90. And I put the 90, see this is my center square now. This is like a strip on one side, side 3, side 4, just like you have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides on your center. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides on our center, but these 2 are already cut to the perfection of the size we need. I also use, depending on the sizes we're working with, these grid lines to help me know if it's coming out to be the width that I need it to be. Then when I come in here, I have to measure from this point, this direction, and it should match up perfect with that corner. And from this point, this direction, and it should match up with that corner. So here's my mini, and it's got this great little 4-inch, let me show you this. It's got this great little 4-inch corner square I use all the time. That's one reason why I love the mini, is because I already have it in my hand, I already have it on the table, and I can just whip it around to get my size. So what I need this to be is 1 3/4. So from the edge where I'm going to cut, see how it's nice and sharp right there at the corner? And my 1 3/4 is right here at the point. That way I know I have enough of my bats on this side, and then I'll measure the other side and know that I have enough on that one. And then I know that this is going to be the perfect size. It's going to fit in my block where I want it to be. Now this one has a solid center, so I'm not worried about this point matching up with something in here. But if I had an option 1 in there, I would want that point to be in the center perfectly so that it will match up nicely with that. So there's that one, and then I just flip it. I look at my 1 3/4 right here to the edge. I look at my corner. I look at my width. And there's my little bat wing. Now look, if you wanted to put, you know, another one here and here, how that gives you an expanded look. But of course for our stars. And this little gold star is actually our 3rd class for Premium Club. This will be class 3 if you want to know more about this block and what we're going to do with it and how we're going to turn it into a quilt. So see how you put your center on in the middle, put your corners on, then sew it together, and there you are with your block. Now we always cut our corners larger. We call that overcutting, and then that gives you room to come in and trim your block up perfect, because we all know no matter how hard we try to cut these perfect and sew these perfect, when you get them on, things don't always turn out in your corners the way that you want them to. It's just the human element. It's just, it's not that, it's not, there's just a human element in it, and you're working with a medium, a fabric that has movement to it, and so things change. So when things don't turn out perfect, don't worry about it. We talk about the science of patchwork and how to back up and figure out where it is. And it's what we call PPMs, our personal private measurements. I know that when I sew these squares to the end of a rectangle, that my corners are not going to come out perfect. And so that's why I make it just a little bit larger. I do what I call an overcut on these corners, and then I have plenty of rooms to square them up and make them perfect. So with the science of patchwork, we just look back at the different places in putting the block or the project together that you have the human element, which is the cutting, the sewing, and the pressing. And we just keep backing up until we find out what that is for you, and then work on making things fit better, whatever it is. And I know that when I get a lot of pieces put together, like say like in this one right here, of this one, when I start, you know, I'll piece all of these corners together, and then I sew this together, and then I'm ready to start sewing those together. And I know when I'm putting those, all of those pieces together and that construction together, for me personally, these seams like this are always a little bit big, which means it shrinks up my block a little bit. That's for me. So when I go in and be what I call a quilt detective and figure out where my human element shows up, then I know when I get to that step of a project, it's like seeing a sign that says icy road ahead. You know, pay attention, slow down, this is where you could have trouble. Everybody's is a little bit different. And so we really hone in on the students of trying to figure out which step is the step that you're losing your accuracy, and which one that you have more human element in. And once you do that, then it's easy to correct it, and that way you get more speed and more perfection in putting those together. So here is our little bat wing. It is a rectangle. So any place in a quilt that you have a rectangle or two squares coming together, you can replace it with a bat wing. Now this one here is a little bit larger. This is for one of our projects. This is class number 1, I guess. So let's go in here and look at this quilt. Let's see where the rectangles are and where you could put a bat wing and how it would switch it up. Now when I look at these flying geese, I have dark in the center and light on my outside edges. So look, if you put a bat wing in here, how would you want to switch up your colors? How would that change the look of your quilt? But look how pretty that would be, having a bat, a bat, a bat, a bat, a bat, a bat, a bat. Look at all of these. Look how that would change it. And then where these two come together, see how that and that would come together. And look at what a beautiful design point or area that you would have with those coming together. Look at all of these little stars here. What if you put a bat in here? Look how that would change your look of your block and of your overall quilt, and just add another level of ooh and ah to your project. Now here in this particular one, you see a bat wing here, and you can see a flying goose up here on the top. So that's one design element that you can have. And then of course in here, maybe you would want to do a bat here for your star. And what if you did one here, here, and here in your star? Or maybe you just do it here on what we call the crown points and add another point in that crown and leave this one more simple. Now in this one here, if you start adding a lot of bats, another design element is that you will be able to add either 9 patches. So maybe in here would be great to add a 9 patch. And in here, you could add a 4 patch or a 9 patch. And it would connect this little bat wing star. And this right here is a flying goose. So look what would happen if we did a bat in there, a bat in there, a bat in there. You could do it just, this is the center of the quilt, the center block. You could do it just in this block and not do it anywhere else in the quilt, and make that perfect, beautiful center focus point on that quilt. So we really teach you skills, and we teach you knowledge. We teach you coping, how to figure out something when things aren't going together the way you want it to be. We teach you creativity. We show you how to switch things up. So there's a lot of levels of learning in our premium club. And then of course we do that in our live webinars like we have today, and of course Quilt Club Week. Quilt Club Week is a totally different animal. Of course you're going to have quilts that you work on. We have lots of different quilts. But I always say, if you go to a quilt show, what do you do at a quilt show? You spend time with friends, you get your mojo going, you see some creative things going on, you see what I call craft sewing, you see more little craft projects with sewing, you may see machine quilting, you may see some new tools or gadgets, and that's what we hone in on Quilt Club Week. It's a nice variety of a lot of different things. And if you went to a quilt show, you'd see different vendors and different teachers. And so in Quilt Club Week, we show different teachers their concept on how they do their quilting, whether it's square in a square or something else. We do handwork, and we also have we have other teachers. Sherry is one of our main teachers, Kay and Kathy are. And Kathy is a wonderful machine quilter. She quilts on just her tabletop machine, and she teaches you how to use your machine and produce beautiful quilting on your quilts. Now, this one here isn't quilted yet. In fact, it's going to the quilter this week. And this one here was quilted on a long arm, and it was quilted by Kay Roberts, which is one of our teachers for Quilt Club Week. So she's kind of a master at everything with the piecing and the craft sewing and the quilting with the long arm, and just beautiful. And then I want you to look at this border or this binding on here. I'm not sure how well you can see, but it's got this little flange in here, and we have a shortcut binding tool that you do the flange and the binding at the exact same time. And I love when you can get just that extra little pop of color right there with your borders and right there where that binding comes together. It's just really easy and fun to do. So I want to show you 2 projects that if we have any questions, get those in, and then I want to show you a couple of other projects. Okay, question, yes.
On the screen.
Okay, what is a scant 1/4 of an inch? I always have issues with this part. That's a very good question, because your cutting and your seams are your main thing that you need to understand so that you can get that perfection that we're looking for. So in quilting, it has always been that you sew a 1/4 of an inch, and that is your seam allowance, and that's how everything is figured so that your sizing turns out perfect. Now, where the rub comes in is, let's say that we have these two pieces we're going to sew together. If I sew a perfect 1/4 of an inch, then as long as these two pieces are together, it's a perfect 1/4. But as soon as I open this up and press it, it becomes smaller. It becomes, because you've got to, depending on the thickness, even the thicknesses of your fabric will affect your sizing. And it's crazy, you know, if you buy a fabric that's thinner than average or a fabric that's heavier than average, you have more that's in this turn of cloth. It's thicker or skinnier. And this will make your work smaller. So if this was like a block and it's supposed to be 8 1/2, it could be 8 3/8 or 8 1/4, depending on that seam allowance and the thicknesses of your fabric. So a scant 1/4 of an inch is what we recommend that you sew. And a scant is, I always say, a hair, a shadow, a whisper, a thread or two. If you're looking at the line, so let's say that, you know, you have a line, this line has a thickness to it. You know, if I'm sewing on this side of it, it's going to, you know, eat up fabric. If I'm sewing on this side of it, it could make it smaller. Even when you're cutting, your rulers have a thickness to the line. And since these are all rulers I have created, I've been able to choose the thickness of the line that I want. There's actually a little ruler with the thicknesses of lines on it. And you can choose when you're making your tools what thickness you want. Because if the line is thick, you know, just let's say if the line is just really thick, if I cut on this side or sew on this side, it's going to make it one measurement. If I cut or sew on this side, it'll make it another measurement. So to answer your question, a scant 1/4 of an inch is a scant smaller, just like a hair, just like a thread. So like when I'm using, I love these little OmniGrid rulers that are like a 1x6 or a 1x12. I keep these everywhere at all of my sewing stations, my cutting table, my sewing machine, everywhere, because I'm always measuring to make sure everything is working the way that it should. But when I line this up, so let's say that, let's just see if your cameras, zoom in as close as you can and let's see if we can look at this. Okay. So when I come in and look at the edge of my fabric of what I'm putting in my machine and where my seam is, it is right on the inside of that line. So that's just a thread smaller, a shadow smaller, a hair smaller, a couple of threads. Now, let's say that well, let's see what this is. Okay, this is a 3-inch square, and I can come in here and measure my seams and see how they are, and I can think, oh, those are pretty good. But when I flip it over and measure the center here, if this is 3, then this, when you flip it over, should be 2 1/2. If it's not 2 1/2, so there it is, 2 1/2, then it doesn't matter what size this was, and it doesn't matter what size my seams are, it's not going to be correct, and especially if I start chopping it up to get lots of other units in there. So really think about your cutting and your seams and make sure that you're as accurate as possible. Now, if you are in a premium club, you can, and it's probably back in some early quilt club weeks maybe, but I have a whole video section, I don't know it, the video may be 20 minutes long or something, setting down at the machine, looking at the foot, talking about adjusting needle placements and all of that. You know, there are different little accessories that you can buy and stuff to go with it to help you with your seam allowances. And I guess whatever helps you, certainly use and do it. But I always talk about how that when you learn to drive, you learn to drive and stay in between the ditch and those center lines, the shoulder and those center lines. You know, you don't have a gauge that's telling you, you know, to stay in that lane. you can drive and stay in that lane. And so I always say, if you have a driver's license, then you can learn how to do that 1/4 of an inch scant and stay where you need to be. I have Alberninas. I have several. They all have either a 37 or a 97 patchwork foot on them. But even though they're all master machines, they could also just a hair bit different. And so for those of you, me, that want that perfection, you have to learn yourself, learn your machine, learn that foot, so that you can get the best that you can get. So hopefully that helps. All right, any more questions? No, you guys are quiet. I hope you're not frozen. A quiet audience today. So let's look at a couple of quilts, and then we're going to be complete. So if you have any questions, be sure and get those in there. Make sure that you follow and sign up and get the bell to ring when we have notifications and all of that. And and get on the email list. When we have something that's planned like this, you'll get an email on it. But when I'm just in my sewing room sewing and I like, people would like to see this, then I just jump on and do in my sewing room. So it's nice when you can get that bell and do that. Okay, this one here, let's look at this little quilt down here. This is class number 2. I'll scoot over a little bit. This is class number 2 that we're going to do, and it's a small 4-inch star. We're going to learn option 1 in the middle. We're going to learn bat wings here on the outside edge. We do have some little kits for you that has some of the little plaid and stuff. We don't have very many of this one. I think we only have 3 left. So if you're interested in this one, get in there and get it. And I also want to point out how a lot of small fat 8s or fat quarters or whatever can be used for projects like this. But look at your binding, how we just have little, just whatever we had left is what we did for our binding. And this one was actually made back in 1995, so it is 30 years old. And it's got a mix of machine quilting and hand quilting in here. And of course the piano border. Now this one here is the one, it's the same one, but it's not scrappy like the plaid one. This one is the one that we call the bow tie fabric kit. So order that one if you like. It's got the 3 main fabrics in your background. Really a cute, love that little quilt. And then for class number 1, our very first class.
What was that kit called?
This one's called Sawtooth. Sawtooth Star.
Sawtooth Star.
And this one is the bow tie. And we have a couple, I think only 3 left that have the plaid. And of course those fabrics all vary. But this one, they'll be exactly like this. You can go on the website and see and choose the ones that you want. Now this one is what we call Carnival Star. We have kits in this one that's from the Paradise fabric, and we have kits on this one that we call the Reproduction. And this one are all exactly the same. This one, there's some different pictures on there. You can pick and choose what you want. Look at them and see what the background is, and see what the main color of the black and gold are. Those are you need to look at those and look at those when you're choosing your kit. And then the inside's pretty much the same. Okay. Any other questions on anything? Okay, I hope you stay safe and warm as we go through winter and have these snow days. Those of you that are in Premium Club, we did a video last Monday on Get Started, if you have any questions on that. And that was open to the public. So for those of you that are thinking about joining Premium Club, go back and look at the one that we did last Monday. And it has more teachings in it and tells you more about Premium Club. And those of you that are Premium Club, we'll see you on Monday for our first class, which is this one. And it looks like we've got one other question that's come in. Are the bat wings in Carnival Star the same size as the flying geese in the Flying to the Stars quilt? We did lots of different sizes in Flying to the Stars. I would say that I guess maybe some are, some aren't. I don't know. Let's see, if this one in Carnival Star, this is an 8-inch block, so these would be a 2x4 sewn. And I'm wondering, I think these are 2.5 by 5, so I don't think we had a 2x4 in that one, unless
On the stars.
these were not 2x4s. These are not 2x4. These are not. If we did, it was maybe in that star down there at the bottom. Nope.
She's wondering about the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Stay warm. Keep that sewing machine fired up, and we'll see you real soon.